In the dim light of the evening, the intercom rang. I wiped the tears streaming down my cheeks and looked at the monitor. My mother-in-law and Stella were standing side by side. Ah, they came to help, I thought. I hurried to the front door and opened it, only to be stunned. "Come on, please bring everything in," my mother-in-law commanded. People who looked like movers entered the house, cheerfully saying, "Excuse us." "What? Wait, what's going on?" I exclaimed, totally bewildered. Hearing my confused voice, my son Wyatt, who had been in his room upstairs, hurried down the stairs. "What's wrong, Mom?" Wyatt asked, watching the movers bustle around. "Well," I replied, still not understanding as I looked back at Wyatt. "We're taking this house. You guys need to get out." "That's right, leave right now," my father-in-law Thomas said efficiently, giving orders as the movers steadily brought items into the living room and other rooms. Suddenly, Wyatt's face turned pale, and he shouted, "No, you can't. Don't you know, Auntie?" he asked, his face ghostly white. "This house isn't Dad's anymore, and it's haunted." Thomas turned around, and the movers stopped in their tracks. Amidst everyone's attention, Wyatt was trembling. "My name is Victoria, and I'm 41 years old. My husband Isaac is 42 and a businessman. Isaac is calm by nature. He doesn't drink, smoke, or gamble. He works hard every day for our family. His hobby? Watching movies with me on weekends. Until last year, our son Wyatt used to join us too. But since he started middle school, he's been more into extracurricular activities and hanging out with friends, spending less time with us." Though I felt sad, Isaac seemed to find it more heartwarming than anything. He reminisces about not attending the prestigious private high school where his parents worked but choosing a local public high school instead. He talks about being the class president and student council president and his best friend from high school. "Your best friend was Thomas, right, Isaac? You've always been such a good student," I tease. Isaac laughs and says, "My parents would have a fit if they heard that." He gets nostalgic, saying, "Still, those were fun times." "Are you having fun now?" I ask while we watch a DVD at home. Isaac simply replies, "I am." Then he looks around the living room and corrects himself. "Well, actually, it's more like happiness. We chose and bought this house ourselves. I have a wonderful wife and a lively son." He says it with a face so sincere that it makes me blush. "I couldn't ask for more," he continues. "That's where you say a beautiful wife," I say playfully, swinging my arm, and Isaac laughs, dodging it. Yes, having a beautiful wife makes me happy. Now all that's left is to work hard to pay off our mortgage. We're still paying off the mortgage on our house, but Isaac has arranged it so I can be a stay-at-home mom without financial strain. I'm the lucky one to have such a kind husband like Isaac. As we sat side by side watching a DVD, I thought this to myself. Isaac has always said he's happy with our married life, but I can't help but think he wasn't very happy before our marriage, especially when he was at his parents' house. It's pretty obvious given the not-so-great relationship he has with his parents and his sister Stella. I heard that the whole issue started when Isaac chose not to attend the high school his parents wanted him to go to. Stella, 2 years older than Isaac, obediently followed their parents' wishes, attending the high school they chose, keeping the high grades they demanded, and even working at a company they approved of. She can't think or decide for herself, according to Isaac. That's the situation. It's easy to just do what your parents tell you, but it also makes you dependent and incapable of making your own decisions or adapting to different situations. This led to her inability to think or make decisions and act on her own, depending on the situation. Sure enough, when she started working, she found herself unable to do anything without explicit instructions. Feeling uncomfortable, she left the company in less than a year. Then her parents quickly arranged a match for her, and she ended up marrying the man her parents chose. Despite having Isaac, they adopted my brother-in-law in as their son and had him live with them. To me, it doesn't make sense to adopt a son when they already have a perfectly good eldest son, Isaac. And speaking of their family, my father-in-law is just a normal businessman. I also didn't see the need for them to financially overextend themselves to send their kids to private high schools. "Oh, that's just the silly pride of my parents," Isaac would say. There's a wealthy family living near his parents' house. Their daughter was the same age as Stella, and they used to play together as kids. However, from elementary school, she went to a private school and ended up distancing herself from the other neighborhood kids. There wasn't any particular incident with that family, but Isaac's parents seemed quite envious of them, determined to send their own children to private school as well. They saved hard to afford Stella's private high school education. Because of these circumstances, dinner at home was rather simple, but Stella's lunches were always extravagant, leading to a rather peculiar dietary lifestyle. Isaac saw no need to strain himself by attending a private high school and chose to go to a public high school instead. I think that was a wise decision. However, my in-laws were furious, and their attitude toward Isaac changed drastically from that day. They used to take pride in the envious glances they received when mentioning the prestigious high school their daughter attended. When asked about their son, they might have felt embarrassed to admit he'd attended a public school. They dreamed of a life above their means, which would not have been good. My in-laws and Stella's family, along with their 3 children, live in a rented house. I'm not saying that renting the house is bad, of course, but I do wonder if there were other ways to use the money effectively besides making the parents look good. They went into debt to send Stella through private high school and college, and they're still paying it off. I could never really understand my in-laws' view on money. This was also evident in the amount of money given as Christmas gifts. The amount given to Stella's children and Wyatt was noticeably different. It could be a difference in affection since they lived together, but it seemed unfair to Wyatt. I couldn't help but sigh at the thought of Wyatt being affected by this. My in-laws also seemed to dislike the fact that we owned our own house, a 2-story house. The house, with its 4-bedroom layout, is larger than my in-laws' place. A study room, huh? Pretty bold for someone from a public school. Such a fancy house is wasted on you folks, they would occasionally remark during their visits. Furthermore, they would nitpick things like, "There's a stain here," or "the hardwood floor is discolored here and there," and then dismissively comment, "It's not all that impressive after all." Honestly, it was exhausting. I don't see the point in them doing that. If they don't like it, they don't have to come over. Isaac thinks it's because they're jealous. They don't have money themselves, and yet here we are, owning a house, even if it's with a mortgage. Isaac laughed, saying, "It's all because they're always trying to make themselves look good outside." My brother-in-law is probably not poorly paid either, and my father-in-law, even in his 60s, is still working, but their debts are holding them back. Don't worry about it, Isaac says. However, when Isaac and Wyatt are not around, my mother-in-law and Stella take their chance to visit. Lately, they've even started to wander around the house while I'm making tea. We should turn this into our bedroom. My husband likes this European-style room. This large room would be great as a study room for the kids, don't you think? They would say, making such presumptuous comments to each other. "What are you doing?" I finally asked, letting my annoyance show. They immediately put on fake smiles. "Oh, we were just having a look around." "You're slow with the tea," my mother-in-law said. I closed the door of the room they were peeking into and asked them to return to the living room. I was horrified when my mother-in-law asked for a duplicate key. There was no way I could give my mother-in-law, who walks around in people's houses without permission, a duplicate key. There was a risk of her snooping through our drawers and closets when we weren't home. After treating Isaac so poorly, it seemed incredibly selfish for them to ask for a key. "Well, I'd need to talk to Isaac about that first," I said, brushing it off and waiting for Isaac to return before firmly declining over the phone. "How can you not give a key to your parents?" My mother-in-law was furious. "Unfortunately, we just can't trust those parents. Anyway, please come over only when either Victoria or I am home," Isaac told her before hanging up. Health is the most important thing, a phrase often said at this age, suddenly hit home. Isaac was diagnosed with cancer. We were speechless when the tests, initially for stomach issues, revealed the disease. With each examination, more widespread cancer was discovered. The doctor said without surgery, Isaac's chances were grim. He only had a few months. We had insurance, but it wasn't enough to cover everything, not only hospital bills but also living expenses and the house mortgage. The happiness we had built seemed to crumble in an instant. I was trembling with the fear of possibly losing Isaac and the anxiety about our future. Clueless and scared, all I could do was fear for the worst. "I'll ask my parents for help," Isaac said. "My parents have passed away, and being an only child, I had no relatives to turn to," I replied. "Okay, I'll go with you," Isaac agreed. We went to Isaac's parents and Stella's family to explain the situation and ask for financial help. Cancer can often be treated these days, right? Stella seemed not to grasp the severity. The in-laws, although not as much as Stella, were reluctant to help financially. I think I heard a few months ago that you have finished paying off your debts, Isaac's father said. Yes, we finally managed to do it. Please, we will definitely repay you. Just lend us the money for the surgery and hospital stay. The money you were going to give me for private school, lend it to us now, please. I'll work too. We're begging you, Isaac pleaded, practically on his hands and knees. No way. We've just recently started to afford a little luxury, his mother said. I have an insurance policy that forgives my mortgage in the event of my death. When that happens, we can sell the house and repay the borrowed money. I'll even write a promissory note, Isaac added desperately. We begged repeatedly, but my in-laws shook their heads. Despite anticipating it, we were left in despair. Why don't you just sell the house now? His mother suggested. Of course, we knew that might be our only option in the end, but if we sold now, we would have to subtract the remaining mortgage from the sale price and still have enough to cover hospital and treatment costs as well as rent for a new home. I heard that even after moving out, Isaac used to send money home when he was single. It seemed only fair that they spend a little money on Isaac's behalf. No matter how much we pleaded, my in-laws and Stella's answers didn't change. Isaac straightened his back and replied calmly, Okay, that's enough. As we were leaving, my brother-in-law came after us saying, Wait a minute, it's not much and I'm embarrassed to say I don't have any savings. He handed Isaac $2,000. That's no surprise, he was helping with the debt repayments too, despite their claims of finally paying it off. It was also thanks to him. I'll try to persuade them again. Please don't lose hope, he added. We deeply thanked my brother-in-law for his gesture. Thank you, your kindness is more than enough. But still, do you have any other plans? He asked. Yes, like Stella suggested, we're thinking of selling the house. Isaac replied. What? I couldn't help but exclaim. It's easy to say, but selling a house involves procedures and takes time. It won't be quick enough for Isaac, who's going to be admitted to the hospital in a few days. Even if sold, we also need to find a new place to live. It's not a straightforward, smooth sailing process. It's okay. I remembered someone who might be able to help, Isaac said with a smile, looking at me. During the 2 years since his cancer diagnosis, Isaac fought hard. Despite being told he only had a few months, he managed to make many happy memories with us, his family, through repeated hospital admissions and discharges. Although we had become quite distant, when the doctor said he probably wouldn't make it back home, I contacted his parents' house. After that, they did visit a few times, but they'd quickly leave after saying, he still seems okay, as if just checking on how long he might have left. It almost seemed like they were coming just to check how much longer Isaac had left. I shook my head hastily, trying to dismiss such a terrible thought. When the doctor instructed me to contact the family, I knew the end was near. I hurriedly called my mother-in-law. Oh my, that's terrible. We must hurry. Yes, that's right. Please come to the hospital room right away, I urged. Oh yes, I'll come if I can, she replied before abruptly hanging up. Despite the unsettling response, I quickly returned to the hospital room where Isaac and Wyatt were waiting. In the end, only my brother-in-law, who came directly from his job, and Isaac's close friend, Thomas, arrived. Seeing us all, Isaac weakly opened his eyes, looked around at everyone, and then closed them for the last time. The funeral arrangements and other details were handled by my brother-in-law and Thomas while we went home to prepare. My brother-in-law stayed with Isaac, and Thomas drove us home. We had left in the morning when the hospital called, and now the sun was already setting. Wyatt and I had left in such a hurry that morning that we hadn't even cleaned up after breakfast. In the dim evening light, I turned on the lights in the house. Sitting in a chair in the brightened living room, I started flipping through a photo album. As I flipped through the album, tears started to flow on their own. Wiping the tears that fell on the table, I selected a photo for the memorial service. The doorbell rang. I wiped the tears off my cheeks and looked at the monitor. My mother-in-law and Stella were standing there together. Ah, they came to help, I thought. They didn't make it in time for the end, but they came. I hurried to the front door to greet them. I opened the door and was completely stunned. Come on, bring everything in. I heard my mother-in-law's voice as people who looked like movers entered our house, saying, Excuse us in an imposing manner. What? Wait, what's going on? I exclaimed in confusion. Hearing my bewildered voice, Wyatt hurried down the stairs from his room upstairs. "What's happening, Mom?" he asked, following the mover's frantic movements with his eyes. I don't understand," I replied, bewildered, looking back at Wyatt. "We're taking over my son's house. You guys need to leave," my mother-in-law declared. "Exactly. Get out right now," Stella echoed. While they spoke, my father-in-law briskly directed the movers, and the belongings started to fill the living room and other rooms quickly. Wyatt, changing his demeanor, abruptly shouted, "No way. Don't you know, Auntie?" His face was pale. "This house isn't Dad's anymore, and it's haunted." On hearing this, my father-in-law turned around, and the movers stopped in their tracks as everyone's attention turned to Wyatt. He shivered visibly. Amidst this, someone entered the house. "What are you doing? Bringing stuff into someone else's house without permission? Get out right now." Thomas's loud voice echoed throughout the house and probably the neighborhood, startling everyone. The movers, without even confirming with their clients, started to hastily remove the belongings they had brought in. Confused about what to do, the belongings were left on the street in front of the house. "Oh no, my desk." I turned around at the sound of my nephew's voice and saw my brother-in-law standing there with his 3 children. The kids were upset, complaining about their belongings left on the street. My brother-in-law looked around, clearly frustrated. "Stella, I got a sudden call about moving, but what exactly is happening here?" he asked. Normally mild-mannered, my brother-in-law was visibly angry. "But Mom said they were moving." "What are you talking about? You agreed to this too," Stella argued. In the midst of their heated argument, my brother-in-law coldly announced, "I can't deal with you anymore. I want a divorce." "What? Wait, what are you talking about?" Stella stammered, clearly shocked. Ignoring her, my brother-in-law directly negotiated with the movers. "I'm sorry for the trouble at such a difficult time. For now, I'll have the movers take my kids and our stuff to my parents' house," he said, not even glancing at Stella. He and the children then left with the movers. Stella collapsed in tears on the street, while my in-laws stood among the scattered belongings, looking dumbfounded. Neighbors began to gather, turning the scene into a chaotic spectacle. "Can we at least move these things inside? They're in the way here," Thomas suggested. I nodded in agreement. "Yes, that's fine. This is your house, after all." "What do you mean?" my in-laws asked, clearly confused. Here's the real story. 2 years ago, the day after we were refused by Isaac's parents, Isaac brought home a very imposing man, Thomas. He owns a real estate business and even gave me his business card. I'd heard he was Isaac's high school classmate, but his demeanor was so intimidating that I initially thought he was from a more dubious background. Wyatt, even as a middle schooler, clung to me tightly, clearly scared. I glanced at Isaac, worried. Noticing my gaze, Isaac tilted his head and then burst into laughter. "It's okay. Thomas may look intimidating, but he's a respectable businessman now." At that moment, Wyatt cautiously spoke up. Suddenly, Thomas's eyes widened, and he gave Isaac a playful smack on the head, despite Isaac's illness. I could hardly believe it, but Isaac just laughed heartily. Wyatt looked so pale that I was worried he might not be breathing. Thomas had never come to our wedding, despite our invitation, and he never visits when we ask him to. That reminded me of how often Thomas's name came up in Isaac's stories about his school days and nights out. I had always pictured him as a reliable, good friend, so I was surprised to realize they were the same person. "Look at me," Thomas said with a grin. "I don't attend weddings or visit homes because my intimidating appearance might cause trouble." "Oh, so that's why you're still single, huh?" Isaac joked, giving Thomas a playful jab. Watching their banter, it was clear he was indeed the Thomas I had heard about. I couldn't help but chuckle at their conversation. When both of them noticed me, they stopped and looked over. "Oh, sorry," I said, wiping away a tear of laughter. "It's just that Isaac is so childishly excited. He's always like this." "Wyatt is here, remember?" Thomas said, reminding Isaac. "A father's dignity is important." "Dignity," Wyatt interjected, lightening the mood. Dad never had that in the first place. I shared how disappointed Isaac was that Thomas couldn't attend our wedding and expressed our hope for future visits. "Thank you for coming. Now, let's get down to business," Thomas said, shifting to a serious tone. He began inspecting the house, checking each room, the exterior walls, and the meter box. After this thorough assessment, he pulled out his laptop and started typing. When he finished, he turned the screen to show us the proposed selling price. How about this? He asked, revealing a figure that took my breath away. It was higher than what we originally paid for the house. That's a very generous valuation, I said, taken aback. But can you really sell it at this price? It's been about 10 years since we moved in, and we haven't renovated much. Like my mother-in-law and sister-in-law mentioned, there are stains and the hardwood floor is worn out. I heard about that from Isaac, Thomas said. They were talking about how they would use each room. If they think it's good enough to live in as is, don't worry, it will sell at this price. Isaac nodded, reassuring me. You can trust Thomas. He knows what he's doing. All right then, please proceed with this price, I agreed, feeling a mix of relief and hope. I smiled as Thomas laid out several documents on the table. Oh, and we need to find a new place to live, I said. Thomas responded with a reassuring smile. Yes, of course. He placed rental agreement forms among the documents. First, I'll buy this house directly, which will resolve your first concern. Then, I'll rent it back to you, addressing your second concern. I was taken aback. What? Thomas continued, I'll transfer the proceeds from the house sale to your account within a few days. We can use that money to pay off the remaining mortgage. Thomas's confident smile, now free of his previous intimidating demeanor, was almost boyishly cheerful. As he filled out the forms, I noticed the rental amount listed, $200. Both Isaac and Wyatt leaned in surprise. You mean $2,000, right? I laughed, thinking it was a mistake. No, it's not a mistake, Thomas said, his tone serious. What? I was stunned. I owe that much to Isaac, Thomas explained. After a brief pause, Isaac replied, No, you don't. Thomas then began recounting their past. He told me about his troubled youth, how he had frequently gotten into trouble, had numerous run-ins with the police, and often caused his mother, a single parent, distress. One day, when Thomas rushed to the hospital to see his mother, who had become frail from exhaustion and stress, he realized how much his behavior had contributed to her suffering. This moment of clarity brought him to tears, and he vowed to change his ways, staying out of trouble and avoiding conflict. However, his past still haunted him. One day, a cigarette butt was discovered on the school's rooftop, which ignited nearby trash and caused a small fire. Due to his bad reputation, Thomas was immediately blamed, even though he denied it. With no one believing him, he faced expulsion. Isaac, who was the student council president at the time, was the only one who believed in Thomas's innocence. Thomas fondly reminisced, we hadn't even spoken before that, but he was the only one who stood by me. I went all the way to the principal's office to protest and gathered evidence by talking to students. I eventually found the person who had smoked the cigarette. Of course, I believed him when he said he didn't do it. Despite no one else believing me, support allowed me to graduate high school, be a good son, and eventually become a business owner. That's why I feel I owe so much to Isaac. We, as a family, looked at each other and gratefully accepted the rental proposal. Thomas continued, That's the story from 2 years ago. As Wyatt mentioned, I now own this house and am renting it to your family. If you don't believe me, I can show you the documents later. He glanced briefly at Wyatt before smiling at my in-laws. If any of your family members want to rent the house themselves, that's fine too. I can offer you a very reasonable price and also introduce you to other properties. The funeral proceeded smoothly, and we moved into a 2-bedroom apartment that Thomas recommended. Just unpack the essentials, Thomas said with a grin. We'll probably be moving back to the house soon. Curious about his optimism, I asked him why he thought so. Wyatt, intrigued, leaned in to listen. Thomas whispered conspiratorially, Actually, I thought about kicking them out initially, but then I changed my mind. Here's the plan. 3 days later, we returned to the house under the pretense of having forgotten some items. Thomas accompanied us, and my mother-in-law reluctantly served us tea and snacks. How do you like living here? Wyatt asked his father-in-law, who responded with delight, Really? It's absolutely fine. Do you ever hear sounds on the stairs when no one's supposed to be there, or noises in the bathroom? Wyatt glanced around the living room, clearly unsettled. Come to think of it, Mom, you mentioned the ghosts, right? He said, his voice trembling. Ever since Dad was hospitalized, there've been strange noises. I even saw the hem of a skirt at the top of the stairs once, thought it was you, but when I checked, no one was there. That's nonsense, Stella interrupted, her voice laced with skepticism. Just then, Wyatt and Thomas both turned abruptly toward the stairs. Is someone upstairs? Wyatt asked nervously. That's impossible, Stella said, her face showing a mix of concern and disbelief. I didn't hear anything. Wyatt and Thomas exchanged quick, knowing glances before hurriedly gathering their things. That's a relief, Thomas said with a forced smile. We'll be heading out now. They left the house swiftly, the in-laws watching them with uneasy expressions. Once in the car, we burst into laughter. Thomas had orchestrated the whole thing as a spur-of-the-moment prank, capitalizing on Wyatt's ghost sighting. It's a little payback for being so cold and distant to Isaac, Thomas said, his tone bitter. Who moves into a dying son's house while he's still alive? Thomas's words struck a chord, and soon, they began talking about how the in-laws and Stella had fallen for the ploy. The house, once just an old structure, now seemed to come alive with imagined paranormal phenomena. They were terrified by the normal creaks and groans of an old house, believing them to be ghostly disturbances. It's amazing what suggestion can do, Wyatt chuckled. They were so scared they moved out. Thomas helped them find a cheaper place, though I made sure it was within their budget, he added with a sly grin. We applauded Thomas for his cleverness. Stella, now divorced, had to start working again to support her children. She's learning the harsh realities of life without the support she once relied on. I hope they manage to make it, I said, genuinely hoping for their well-being despite everything. Back in the house we bought with Isaac, we can't reclaim ownership, but we're renting it for just $200 a month. Our brother-in-law and his kids have started showing up again, and Stella seems eager to reconcile, though he's not interested at all. Once a month, Thomas visits under the guise of collecting rent, always on the anniversary of Isaac's death. After paying his respects at the altar, we shared dinner together. Thomas also listens to high schooler Wyatt's troubles, and we all enjoy the stories about Isaac's student days that Thomas sometimes shares. These tales reveal sides of Isaac we never knew, and I'm sure Isaac is with us in spirit, laughing along and making excuses with a childlike charm.